Welcome back to Coffee with Krav. Welcome to the 40th episode of Coffee with Krav, where I have conversations with different people from different walks of life. And what I'm looking to do is to educate, entertain, and have some fun. So today, in today's complex world, teaching children about money is more important than ever, from the basics of savings and budgeting to the nuances of investing and responsible spending. Our goal today is to equip you with the knowledge and the tools to install lifelong financial skills to your children. Okay, so let's get started. Um, just before we get started, we had a little technical difficulties, but Teresa has made it on just in the right time. So let me give the bio of Teresa. So Teresa Gorlinsky is a director of the Advisor Advancement Institute at New York Life Investments. Teresa leverages her advisor and client-facing experience to develop practice management across various topics, including women investing, building effective teams, succession planning, and the psychology of growth for senior management financial advisors at strategic partner firms. Prior to joining New York Life's investments, Teresa spent the last 15 years as marketing executive in the financial service industry. In her previous roles at Hightower and Investment News, Teresa focused on developing robust content marketing plans that resonated with target audiences before finding her niche in the financial advice industry. Teresa was a content marketer in the automotive and pharmaceutical spaces as well. Teresa has a Bachelor of Arts degree in journalism and public relations from the University of Wisconsin. Teresa, welcome to Coffee with Krav. Nice to see you here. Cheers. There we go. We both got the Coffee with Krav mugs. All right.
Okay.
Beautiful. All right. So today I want to start talking about raising financial savvy children. What I like to do is I like to start from a younger age,
Yeah,
and then work our way up. So I might jump around a little bit, but I'm going to try to do it in chronological order. So
perfect.
let's begin with, at what age should a parent start to teach their children about money, and what are some of the practical ways parents can introduce financial literacies to their young children?
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks, Mark. And I think it's a great question, right? I think the number one thing to really think about is that kids hear us. They hear us. They know everything that they have like that sixth sense, even though we think, oh, they don't understand. They hear us say things like talk about money and taxes and all of that stuff. So the sooner you can explain to them, like here's a cash register. Let's play store. This is what mom's doing, or dad, this is what I'm doing when I'm at Target and I put this card in this machine. Now we have to pay for it. Sort of narrating some of that positive stuff. You can't, start too early, 3 or 4. We typically say around between the ages of 5 and 8 to really gamify it if you can, right? So again, get that cash register, play store, talk, there's all kinds of like games and things that out there that you can do with the kids. And just,
So what type of
anything you can do
what
at
type of
play.
games? I would think Monopoly is a little
Yeah. So
too
have you ever,
yeah.
so when I did this with my boys, right? They had this little toy cash register and they had a kitchen, like we had a play kitchen. And we would pretend we were at the store and I was at the grocery store, right? And I would say, okay, I want to buy this and this. How much is it? And they would say, three green ones, three green, we had paper money that came with the cash register. So just things like that. The other thing that a friend of mine who was a financial advisor gave me this idea was we had popsicle sticks. And so we would write a chore on the popsicle stick and like put 25 cents or, you know, take the laundry out of the dryer and put it in this basket for me, 25 cents, and little things. And I had them in a jar and they could pull it out. And they were like, oh, okay, this is how I'm making money. And then we would go to Target and I would say, okay, well, do you want, I want a Matchbox car, here it is. What was interesting is one kid was like all in, right? He was like, I totally want to save, make as much money as possible. I want to go and buy all the things. The other one was like, mm, you know what? Like, it's really not worth it. I'd rather not get the things than have to do that stuff. So, but still, like they're thinking, like you're making that connection.
They're making those decisions. So
Yeah.
interesting you say that. Um, so when I was a young kid, I was living in Brooklyn, and we were on the sixth floor of an apartment building. And my dad would give me, I think it was a quarter, and I would
Yeah.
have to, and I was 6 or 7 years old. I'd have to go down 6 floors. He asked me to go buy Barron's for him. Okay. And Barron's maybe was 15 cents. So I
Oh
go
my
down.
gosh. This
Yeah,
is
it
how
was
you
it
got
was
your
long,
start.
long, long time ago. So I go down the elevator, go across the street, go across another street to a store, candy store, where I buy the Barron's. Now the Barron's is 15 cents. Maybe I get another dime left over. And so I was like, oh, the dime, he's paying me. This is what he did. I had the dime. So I buy, a comic book
Yeah.
or, you know, chocolate or potato chips or something. So then I went to my dad. I said, Dad, I love the Hot Wheels, right? The Hot Wheels, little Hot Wheels. And can you buy it for me? He said, what'd you do with, the extra money that you made? I said, what do you mean? I bought, comic books. He goes, well, you know, that's money that if you want to buy a Hot Wheels, you need to save. So it was an early lesson that my dad taught me, that if I wanted something, that I earned it, and that I had to use that money, that earnings. Don't use it to buy candy or
Yeah.
other things. So that was a good
You know,
early life
I
lesson.
I think the most important thing is, I don't know about you, Mark, but money was kind of where you, in my family, it was like you don't talk about money. I remember asking my dad, can we do this? Can we go here? Can we do that? And he kept saying, like, no, that's too much money. We can't afford that. Da 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 da. And I probably was like 8, and I just innocently, I was like, well, how much money do you make? Because I was going to help him problem solve, and get myself there. Wow. I mean, he was like, you never ask anybody that, da 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 da. And so literally, I just knew, "Ooh, I don't know, don't ask that." That's not what we want to do, right? Like, we don't want to have that stigma, because lo and behold, when it was time for me to talk about money when he was 75, I dreaded it. I did
Mm.
it, but it was harder, right? Because in my brain, I knew my dad didn't want to talk about money. So I think, and there's a study that Ellevest just cited, a recent study that said 52% of adults, so over half of adults, would rather talk to their kids about sex than their parents about money. And I'm like, that's kind of crazy, right? But I feel like that's part of this generation. So the more we can talk about money in ways that are age appropriate, I just think it's a healthier mindset for everyone.
So what about parents that don't consider themselves good with money?
Yeah.
Should they be talking about money and finance?
Yeah.
Because there's people that I've met that they were, I don't know anything about this. Well, how could I teach my kids? So should
Right.
they be talking about it?
Right. Yes. So it doesn't, like, how it is where you're like, the kids might be asking you about how much do you make, and you're like, I don't even understand how investments work. Or guess what? I feel as though we've made some mistakes and I don't feel great about that. All of those things are teaching moments,
Mm.
right? So talking about the things that are, even if you don't know the most about investing, ideally what you can say to them is, I'm not an official aficionado of investing or all of these things. That's why I have a professional. That's why I have a Mark. And right. And hopefully, and between 12 and 18, that's when you should introduce them to your financial advisor, right? So they start to understand how that works and they start to feel comfortable. And then they can ask the questions that you might not be able to answer. But you definitely know this is how we run our household. We have expenses, we have to save. This is what happens when all of a sudden the refrigerator dies. And if we don't have enough money in savings, we have to use a credit card. As they get older, you can tell them more of those things. But you all have a money story, right? You don't have to know everything to talk about something.
So let me go back a little bit. When would you suggest a parent start giving an allowance, and
Yeah.
what role does allowance play in teaching children about money management, and how should a parent approach that?
Yeah, so like we started with like the popsicle thing. So, and
Right.
we did a lot of research and we've asked people like what educators and things like that. So 5 to 8, those simple things, if they want to, right? If they don't want to do the chores, fine. But then from 8, starting like 8 to 12, you have designated household responsibilities at home. And we are going to give you an allowance for that. And the allowance should, will go, some of it goes to you. And however, Mark, if you want to buy your, comic books or things like that, that's what you're going to start to cover, right? And being kind of clear with them, like, we're not going to buy comic books anymore. That's for you. That's what your allowance is for, if that's what you want to do. And what it does is it connects work with money, right? You have to work to get the money and you have to make decisions with the money, right? It doesn't just multiply by itself. It's also a good time to really talk about saving. Some people say you should really require it. It's kind of hard at 8 or 9, but by 10, 11, 12, I think that's a good time to say, like, we can have 2 separate piggy banks, we can open a savings account, but you're going to get this allowance and we expect a couple bucks to go into savings because that's just for you and your future someday.
Yeah, early on, I mean, probably when my kids were really young, we actually had 3 red piggy banks. So
Ah,
when they got money from allowance or birthday,
yep,
there was a savings piggy bank, a spending piggy bank, and a philanthropy piggy bank. So
yes,
we were trying to encourage that, early on. So we had those three piggy banks. So, but
yep,
my question is, there are certain times when kids get a lot more money. So it could be a big
yeah.
birthday, a holiday, or something. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. The first thing is you don't get to deposit that or play with the toy or wear the shirt until you have written that thank you note. Number one, you want to show gratitude,
Hmm.
right? That is the number one thing. That is a gift that isn't going to always come, right? That's called entitlement. Most of us aren't going to do that, right? So that is a gift. Someone else worked to give you that gift. You have to say thank you.
Okay.
Then what, again, that is where it is you would suggest you should always put a portion of that in savings, right? And also that is something, then that was a gift that was given to you. The other thing is I love the philanthropy piggy bank because I think you can't talk about charity too soon, right? And the importance of that and how giving to others, right, and helping other causes or things that you're passionate about, that can really be a source of joy. One tip that I heard from someone is they would give each child, right? They would say at Christmas, one of their gifts was, this is $25. We're going to hold on to it. And you can spend it on any charitable thing that you want. So if there's a food drive at school, if you have a friend that is, a family that's running for cancer, if maybe someone in your family is sick, and you're trying to explain to them the illness and they feel helpless, they can donate to that charity. So that's another good way of adding that in. And that, 8 to 12 is a good time to start talking about all of
I like that. And you mentioned before, opening up like an account. So
that.
do you think at around that same time they
Yes.
should be opening up a savings account or
At the
uh
very least, yes, I do. Because that's fun, right? And then they get a statement. It's a great opportunity to say, here's your statement. What does that mean, right? What are all of these things?
I'm
So
gonna age myself right here. My parents did that, and I had a little bank book,
Oh my God,
And
I missed the bank book. I
yeah,
did
I got
bank
the
books
bank book and it
too.
got the little interest on it,
It was
you
the
know.
best. I know, I missed
No
that
more
too.
bank books these days, I guess.
No, they give you, and you have to ask for paper or you download the PDF. But yeah, I think those are all really good exercises, and you'll see the kids lean into it most of the time.
And looking at the consumer side of things, I've seen too
Mhm.
many grown-ups overspend. Do you have any strategies for parents to encourage their kids to be savvy consumers and understand the value of budgeting or comparison shopping?
100%. I think the comparison shopping is super smart. Listen, as a mom, I really hated to shop with my kids in tow. I mean, it was not efficient. It was sort of annoying. Everybody was all over the place.
Right.
But I think the more, and I could have done a better job of this, but sometimes I'm in the stores and I'm like, they're doing a good job. You know, you'll see a dad say, okay, well, how much is this? Well, how
Mm.
much is that? This is the same thing, and you can save $1, right? I think that comparison shopping and understanding um, is so important, and it encourages them to educate themselves about things, right? So yeah, comparison shopping is important. Understanding what a sale is, understanding that'll most likely go on sale, and having a conversation with them and saying, I know you want to buy this now. This stuff typically will go on sale or off season. Like just starting to hear all that, those sorts of things is helpful.
Okay. And as we move towards a teenager
Yeah.
kids, uh when when do you think you start talking about budget or debt?
Yeah.
What ages do you think that's a good idea?
So I would say like 12, 13 to 18. You have like 5 years there, right? Where they're still under your household, so you can do hopefully some molding. The number one thing I would say is look at the curriculum and look at the coursework and the clubs that are available at their high
Mm.
schools. I required, there's usually an accounting class, there's usually like an economics class, a budget. Make them take at least 1 to 2 throughout their high school. If there's something they can take once a year, that's so important, and they will at least get exposure to it from someone else. Most of the high schools, a lot of them have like investment clubs, all of those sorts of things. I mean, it's hard to make a teenager join a club that they don't want to, but just make sure that they know it's out there. Um, I think it is a really great time, once they are 15, 16, to get a job. Even if it's a summer job, someplace that isn't your household, someplace where they're going to get a paycheck
Mhm.
and see what is happening, right? Like see what is coming out from a taxes standpoint. See how it is to work and you have to wait 2 weeks until you get paid. My son came home and he's like, "Who's FICA?" That's a tax. I'm like, "Welcome." And he's like, "Gosh, I always heard dad talk about taxes." And, I didn't no wonder he's crabby about taxes. And I'm like,
That had
well,
happened the same thing to me. My very first check, I looked at it, I said, if it's supposed to be $100, it was
yeah,
80, whatever the number was. I was like FICA, yeah. I went
who's
to my
that?
mom. Who is this? Well, they
Yeah,
said that's your partner for life.
yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Thanks.
Right. And had you already spent like your $100 in your
Oh no, I
brain?
spent more than that. I spent. I was a kid. What did I know?
Of course. I know.
Uh,
We're all the
but
same.
speaking of debt, though, because there's pros and cons of debt, right? Debt can be good. Debt can be your friend. Debt can be your enemy. How do you go about talking to
Well,
a teenager
yeah. Well,
about that?
typically teenagers, the two conversations are, can I drive a car? Can I get a car? Can I, that. So that's a great time to talk about car expenses, insurance, how you have to budget for that, gas, all of those things. So the whole thing around the car, that's a big conversation that could really teach them a lot. The other thing is college, right? And so that's typically when you start talking about college. And I think that it is so important to really set the table and talk about expectations around college. Who's going to pay for it? How does it cost? You know, how much will it cost? Scholarships, all of those sorts of things. I mean, how do you like, how do you usually suggest, you know, parents talk about that whole college concept?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you have to, you know, you have to get it out on the table. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, the dinner table is a great spot because you know they got to eat, right?
Yes.
They got kids got to eat, so it's
I
always the
love
it's always you know so it's always the dinner table where these
Yep.
things come up, and you got to bring up that subject, and you got to kind of talk through what the to your point what the expectations are in terms of, all right, well, we're going to take care of it, we're going to take a loan out, the loan's going to be this, you're going to have to pay the loan
Yes.
after school, so you're going to learn about debt. You know, the debt is, you know, we're not paying the whole way for your school. You're going to have this loan. It's going to be with you for a period of time. As you make money, you're going to have to take a portion of that money and pay off that debt. So, you know, you go through that explanation there. Some of it goes in one ear, out the other.
Yeah.
But you know, you do talk about that. So that brings up another question that I have is, what are the common mistakes that parents make that they should be avoiding? Is it not talking about it at all?
It's
I mean,
not talking about it. It's
yeah,
not letting them know, hey, you know, because in ninth grade, freshman year, when children start high school, day one, they talk about college preparation. Are you going to want to go to college? Are you not? Right. So they have no idea. It's like this big thing, right? They don't understand how much it costs or any of those things, especially if you haven't talked to them about money all of this time, right? If they don't have a sense of where your family is at and where it, you know, just what you're going to be able to provide for them. I think also, listen, colleges totally vary in cost and all of those things. So parents not understanding and letting kids know, listen, scholarships can defray some of this, you know, but that should come into play. I think the other thing that we hear all the time that parents are making is credit card companies are sending promotional items to your children younger and younger and younger. And you have to take the time to explain that to them and go through the exercise of compounding interest and in the negative, right? The interest, and if you only do the minimum payment and then how much that product is. They are seeing so much at them. The other thing is not understanding what they are seeing online.
hmm.
So they are getting folks are pinging them online, right? Bitcoin, and they're learning on TikTok, and they're learning all of these things. You have to
You mean
understand
you
that.
shouldn't get all your education from
No,
TikTok? Oh,
but
oh,
they are, and we cannot forget about that, right? So having an open dialogue with them. I know my boys were like, we want to, why aren't you and dad invested in Bitcoin? Right. And they just thought we were super ridiculous and antiquated. And I just said, first of all, you have to know your investing values. What are you trying to do? Like we went through the whole thing. But those credit card statements, it's kind of crazy and kids can really get in trouble quickly.
yeah. I remember my freshman year, I walked into the campus center and there was all kinds of Visa, MasterCard, all these credit cards. Wow, I can get that and I could just spend on that. Yeah, you know, you got to be, to your point, you got to be really, really careful. You know, are there any apps that you would suggest maybe for younger kids or maybe for older kids? Any apps? If not, I have a couple that I did some
Yeah.
research, but do you have any apps that you would recommend that kids can get on because they like the virtual part
They
of it?
do. I mean, I do think every bank has an app. So where you're setting up your savings account and all of those things, them having access to that, I think is really great. Um, Other than that, I don't really have, I just think
There was an
about the
app that
bank.
again I was just for
Yeah.
this podcast I was just researching. There was something called, and I'm not promoting this at
Right.
all. I just happened to find one called Bankaroo, which
Yes,
is a
I've heard about that now that you say that.
virtual bank for kids, where you can teach them about the value of money in a safe environment.
Mhm.
The kids can learn to budget, save, put goals up, spending responsibly, and it's kind of cool and easy app for, there. So that was for younger kids. And then I saw another one, YNAB, you need a budget. YNAB, you need a
Oh, I
budget.
like that. Well, that's
Yeah.
great marketing, first of
Yeah,
all.
that was great. So that's a tracking device, and these things can be tracking devices. So um, it can send an email to the parent about what they're spending, so parent can overview and watch what's going on. So those were two apps that I thought were
Our
were,
kids
were pretty
live,
interesting.
our kids have a whole digital life, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
So you just want to make sure you're tapped into that when it comes to money as well, and understanding kind of advertisements. I have one of my friends is like, the amount of Instagram and Facebook ads for clothing and makeup items and all of that stuff that her daughters are getting. She's like, it is like ridiculous that that's their entire birthday and Christmas list. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, where are you even learning about this? But it's the ads that are coming to them, you know, over their phones,
And
over
I
their,
think
you
there's
know,
another good point to make here. Um, when you don't see cash anymore. It's very
no,
rare, right? So if you had a wad of cash and then you start spending it, now the wad goes smaller, so you realize that you're spending. But now it's just a click of the button,
I know.
and you're just clicking away, and it's so easy. It's so easy to spend. So kind of having a tracking device or having some kind of app or watching over something, it's Amazon and all these
Yeah.
other companies have made it too easy to spend. So really watching the spending, I think, is a very, very important thing,
Yep.
which leads me to the next part,
Mhm.
which is, okay, now either you're not going to college, so you're out of high school, you're starting your life, or you're coming out of college, you're a young adult, and you want to be financially savvy. So the kid, let's just say, coming out of college, what are the things that they should be looking at? What should they be doing there?
I think the thing while they're in college or while they're, looking for a job or understanding what they want to do with their life, I think it's important, and we've heard this time and again, that they understand the cost of living of where they live and their career choices, right? And how you are going to be compensated over your lifetime based on your career choice, right? So a teacher, right? Teachers get pensions. So that's a different conversation. And when kids are thinking about what do I want to do with my life, right? And how much of a loan do I want to take out? And what's my debt ratio going to be? I think it's very important to have those conversations. And I think a financial advisor is a really great person to do that with, which is why we suggest you introduce them to them, because it's sort of like the real world big picture, and they don't really necessarily want to listen to their parents. So for big things like that, we really recommend they go to their financial advisor. I think it's number one, what are your expenses, and
Mhm.
making sure that your expenses are covered by your paycheck. And of those expenses, a non-negotiable is healthcare. You can't not have healthcare.
Makes sense.
So many kids can stay on if the parents can afford it and are willing to until they're 26. That's not always a given. So those are conversations you should be having. But healthcare has to be one of those expenses. So you want to talk about that. Then you want to talk about hopefully there's something left over, right? And what are you doing with that? That ratio of what are you saving? You always have to have an emergency fund. So talk to them about that. What are they putting into their 401k if that's part of it, right? Like saving for retirement, it's never too soon. And so that whole compounding, what does that look like? Again, your financial advisor, getting your child connected to your financial advisor. I've never met a financial advisor that has ever said, I really don't want to work with your children. I've never
Hmm.
heard one.
That'd be
Have
silly.
you?
No, Uh, no, I
Yeah.
haven't. Yeah, so one thing when my daughter had graduated and she was living on her, she went to live on her own, I created a budget, like an Excel spreadsheet, but we made it really easy for her to plug in the numbers, and then we incorporated into our practice because other children of clients
That's
wanted
awesome.
to use it. So it was something that it was easy for her to kind of plug all the numbers in and make sure. And I think that you made some great points. So if I can kind of crystallize it, it was prioritize expenses, rent, loans,
Right.
fixed costs, live within your means. I think that was
Yes.
another.
I should have said that. Yeah.
No, but you did say that. Um, I call it give till it hurts in the 401k. Start early, give
Yes.
till it hurts. How do you know when it hurts? It's when you're like, I can't give anymore. That's when it hurts. So
Mhm.
give till it hurts in the 401k. Um, Save for the future, delay gratification. And that's very, very difficult
So
for
hard.
young adults, right? Oh, let's take a trip. Let's go this. My friend is in another state. Let me go visit them. It's their birthday, whatever. So delay gratification. Um, and I like encouraging create goals. So what's my goals? If we have a goal. So those are
Yes.
some great things. Now, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. I was mentioning that I have this coffee with Krav, and they said, my kids are in their 30s. Do you think it's too late for them to learn, or what are some of the things that people in the 30s? So let's shift to that. What would you suggest to children in the 30s?
I spend way too much time giving a presentation called How to Talk to Your Parents About Money. And I had to figure it out myself because again, when I was dealing with my parents and money, I think it is imperative when they're in their 30s to check in with them and say, how are things going? And at the same time saying, just so you know, here's in general where we're at. Here's what dad and I are planning for. Here's what I'm planning for, right? Because the sooner you can have that dialogue, then it becomes something that you're working on. I would never suggest you come in and say, we think you are spending too much money.
Mm,
Why don't you kids? We weren't doing that at your age. I really would not do that,
mhm,
right? Because what you want is again, everyone to feel comfortable that money is not a sore subject, right? So I would say come in and lead with talking to them about your finances, right? We have about 15 more years that we're going to before we retire, and ideally we would love to do this and do that. So right now dad and we're saving for this or paying off this, and our goal is to do a great family vacation once every 5 years with all of you. That's what we're hoping for. Just be real, open about that at that age. That would be my guess. What would you suggest?
Well, I think that if it's in the 30s, it depends on their living situation. So
Yeah.
let's take let's take someone that's married,
Right.
right? So if someone's married first, and maybe married with their first child, they want to make sure that they have life insurance so that if one of the two
Yes.
passes, that there's money that comes in because they're going to lose that income. So they want to have enough life insurance. The other thing that is a common mistake that you don't really think of is that if the children have money, if well, these young adults, these 30 something year olds have money, 401k and all that, they should have a will.
Yeah.
So some estate planning,
Yep.
maybe a living will, healthcare proxy. So
Yep.
God forbid one of them becomes incapacitated, they have directive of
Yep.
what to do. Continue making sure it gets very, very expensive at that age. So they might be like having walking this tightrope of, should I save money for myself? Should we go on this vacation? We have a child, should I put into the 529 plan? Should I be putting in money into the 401k? So there's all kinds of things that are, which one should I do? How much should I put in all these? So there's all these different questions. I'm going to say on the 401k side, always want to have that, even if it's a little bit, you always want to put money
Yeah.
into that 401k. The earlier, the better. The earlier you start a 529 plan right from the beginning, like as soon as they get their social security number, start that 529
100%.
plan, put it in, even if it's a little money, just get into the habit. So I think it's very, very important to have good habits. Those are good habits. Creating a budget and sticking to that budget. Very, very difficult. It's very difficult because you see other people there, they might not they might not have a budget and they might be spending quite a bit, and you're like, how does that person spend so much? And I can't. Well, those people might have issues and problems later on. So those are just some
I
of the things
love that. I think
I would
that's so
suggest.
smart. And then when you're talking to your kids about your 30-year-olds, make sure you have all that stuff too, and make sure they know where it's at, right? And that's a great way to kind of bring that in. Um,
I
yeah,
think that
no,
I think that's a great suggestion, and that's a good question. So let's say you're that parent, like your parents, right? They didn't want to say anything about
oh my
money
gosh,
to you, right? So
terrible.
what's a good age? Because if you say it too early, then the kids are saying, well, let's say you're a person of means, and the kid says, "Wow, you have that much money? Oh, well, well, maybe I should take this, or why don't you give me this?" Or so, what's a good age for the parents to talk to the kids about
I
what
know
they
that
have?
age-old question, how much money do we have? What do we have? Um, I think that it is okay. I think kids notice everything,
Mhm.
right? We're
Yeah.
not hiding anything from them. So if you have means, if there is some wealth that you have, if you have wealth, the kids know it, right? So I think again, being very upfront and talking to them when they're in their teenagers, right? That's when they're starting to think, like, listen, yes, we have wealth. Number one, we are going to be philanthropic with that, right? And that is our wealth. It's not necessarily yours, right? So we're going to have a trust. We're going to do all of these things. We're not sure yet where all that's going to go, but we are sure that you have to understand what you want to do with your life based on you. So the more you can talk to them about that when they're those teenagers and they're making those things, they start thinking about, do I really have to go to school? Or maybe I can just, major in something kind of fun. Understand that they are going to be, the expectation is that they have their own career, right? And that they are self-sufficient.
So to differentiate, saying that this is our wealth that we created, not necessarily yours. You need to foster your own path to do it yourself.
Yes.
That's a very, very, very good point.
Yeah.
Um, I mentioned about well, I have a question on maybe some books or any suggested readings or any podcasts or anything like that. Do you have any thoughts? Because a lot of parents and a lot of kids want to love the podcast and love to read books or listen
I
to
think
books.
podcasts are great. And I'm not going to like specifically, like say, but if you, all you have to do is go on Amazon or go on Spotify and just start like, even if you go and you look at, Coffee with Crab, suggested things will come up, right? And just start exploring and understanding what it is that is of interest to them, right? If they are, and listen, there's CNBC, there's all of those things. A lot of times there's a lot of fear mongering or there's a lot of excitement, right? Like talked about, this is the next biggest stock and all of that. I would just say try and guide them. That's important information, but also guide them to some stuff that's a little bit less news based, right? And that is a little bit more methodical on these are some of the things that you should be doing.
Yeah, and you mentioned like earlier compounding of interest. Talk to them about
Yes.
now. Compounding of interest works against you when you have credit card debt, but it works for you when
Correct.
you're doing investments, stocks, and
Correct.
things like that. So those are definitely important concepts that that kids children, young adults should
Mhm.
understand. Teresa, this has been fabulous. You've given us some great information, great things for people to talk about. Any questions that I didn't ask that I should have asked, or to the audience, or is there anything else that you think is important that you wanted to tell the audience?
I think the one thing is that I wish I had done sooner, and I learned this, I when in working with folks, I started to hear that is the family mission statement when it comes to money, right? It is very much, so I went backwards, right? And I said to my husband and my sons, this was last year, I'm like, if we were doing like a family mission statement when it comes to money, like what's our mantra? What would it be? And my boys were like, you got to work, you got to work, you got to work. I think we said that to them quite a bit. But what we came up with was work hard, save hard, travel well. That's really what our goals were, right? We wanted to work very hard. We wanted to save, save, save. And part of our saving plan is giving away, right? Make sure that we did all the things right, right? But then we would go on the trips, or we would take the vacations. And while we did it within reason, we would have a plan. We would just go and enjoy ourselves. For us, that was something that we like to do as a family. And last year we went to Iceland, the four of us, and it was fascinating. So that was just us, right? That's what motivates us. But I liked that idea of like having a family mission statement. That's especially helpful if you do have wealth, right? How do you guys think about your wealth? How do you think about preserving it? How do you think of giving it away? How do you think of growing it? Right? Those are all important things. If you're talking to them as a value based, middle school, early high school, I think that's pretty cool.
I love that. I
Mhm.
love that. I love that idea of a mission statement. Well, Teresa, you said it all. I want to thank you for joining us
Mark,
on
this is the
Coffee.
best cup
Cheers.
of coffee I've had in a long time.
Cheers. Cheers to you. And
Thank
thank you so much. And everybody out there, thank you for listening here. Hopefully you took some great points out, and you're creating some savvy financial children out there. And until next time, to Coffee with Krav, have a be safe and be kind to others. Take care. Bye bye.